let's talk about rebound and compression. These are the big dark issues on motorcycling. So on this particular model, this is a brand new 450 FE. It just got uncrated today and built up by Caleb, one of our build techs. So let's kind of talk about compression up on top. Typically, when you see compression on the KTMs, the Huskies, or the gases, the compression adjuster is going to be white, and the rebound adjuster will be red or a flat tip screw. So if you have a Japanese bike, if you're looking for compression, it will say 10. They don't have a direct translation for compression in Japanese, so they use tension versus compression. So that's something that might help you out on that. So as far as your clickers here, basically what these do is we're going to click this all the way closed and we're going to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we are 15 clicks out, and the way we figure that out is we turn it all the way in, we count the clicks, or if it's just a smooth rotation, you just count how many times you've turned that and keep mind of that. So we're 15 clicks, so I'm actually going to note that down on the compression. So we're 15 out on our standard compression on it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to back these all the way out to where there is no compression set at all in this system. So basically what we're doing is we're pulling that adjuster needle completely out of the port valve to where it's just letting a free flow of fluid go through the system. Nothing's restricting it. And that's all this needle really does, is it controls the restriction on how much fluid goes through the valving. Get that opened all the way. Okay, that one's open all the way. Now we're going to open up the compression all the way on this side too. Some forks or fork systems you may run across. If you've got an air fork system, you may only have an air fork on one side, and then the other fork leg actually does the compression and the rebound. So that's actually called a separate function front fork. Very common systems. Okay, so I've got the compression completely backed out now up on the front forks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the bike off this lift here, or off the stand, and we're going to see how mushy that front end is. So keep in mind, all we're doing is we're either restricting or opening up all the flow through that valving. So compression's all the way open. Basically, remember, compression is going to be bump absorption, how it absorbs that bump. So we can either firm it up by closing it all the way off, or make it feel really soft, maybe for some enduro type of riding. You don't want it as stiff. You want that suspension to work a little bit more. So now we're going to check it out. So very, very soft setup on that. You can actually see how easy that compresses down. So now we're going to go to the extreme, and we're going to close everything off so we can see some of the visual differences on that. Obviously, being a pilot on the bike, you're going to feel it more than see it. But just from a step back point of view, we can get an idea on how this is actually operating. Now, one thing I really encourage everyone to do is fiddle with your suspension. If you're not sure how it reacts, count your clicks out or count your clicks in, see where your suspension is at on your base settings, note that setting down, and then just start fiddling with it. Go out in the dirt, open up all your clickers completely open to where there's no restricting at all, and you'll actually feel how loose and wiggly the bike can actually be. Okay, so now the compression is completely closed off. That means everything is just locked out. There's no fluid really running through there at a high rate of speed. It's very restricted. So now we're going to see that compression stroke on the way down. See how stiff it is now? So it's a lot firmer. So now if you're hitting bumps or anything like that, it's going to feel really harsh. So the trick is finding what's going to work for you. So going to a base setting or getting your factory settings, and then you can fiddle from there. I'm just going to set these right back to the stock settings, 15 clicks out. 3, 4, 5. Okay, that one's set, 15 clicks out. Okay, so front end's all set to stock now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up the rebound adjusters, which are down here. So basically I'm going to speed up the rebound by opening up the faucet. You're just opening up the flow in those clickers. So these are kind of hard to see. If you kind of angle up in that area, you might be able to see one. In fact, I'm going to tip this over so Carlos can get a good shot of that underneath the fork. Can you see that underneath there, Carlos? That red adjuster? So that's our rebound adjuster there. So functions exactly the same way, just rotates and either closes off the fluid amount or it opens up that amount to where it races through there a little quicker. So we're just gonna open these clickers all the way up. All right, that one's open. Now, once you feel it stop, don't keep forcing it because these are all little aluminum pin needles in there and little aluminum tubes. If you force things, you can actually break them and cause a lot of damage to the fork. Like, it's really expensive to replace some of those weird little items that typically don't get broken. I'm actually gonna do a count on the inside this one because I need to get my factory settings. So 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. Okay, so we're 17 clicks out. And now I'm just going to open them up completely, but now I have my count and I know where my base setting is at. So completely open right now. I'm just going to note that down really quick so I don't forget about it. Okay, so rebound's completely open now. That means it's just an open faucet going through that valving. Now we're gonna see how fast it rebounds up because there's nothing restricting it. So we're gonna do a good compression down and see how fast it comes up. It comes up a lot quicker now. Yeah, basically just boinks right off. So in a situation like this, it's gonna feel like it's gonna deflect you off of everything because that rebound's working really quickly and there's nothing really restricting it and maintaining that speed as it rebounds down. So or rebounds up. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close it off completely. Now there is a caveat when you slow your rebound too much. Let's say you're in a rhythm section and you hit the first bump and your wheel compresses up into the suspension. Well, you've got your rebound so slow that it's trying to come down. It hits a second bump only halfway through the stroke and then it compresses again. And then by the third bump you hit, your suspension's already completely collapsed. It hasn't had time to rebound down to that ground or whatever terrain you're playing on. So be mindful. You don't want to slow your rebound down so much to where it's not even working for you. But we're just going to see a good example of what happens when we slow that rebound down completely. Basically just locking it out. And I actually see this on quite a bit of our mountain bikes that come in, our e-bikes. We'll get riders that are out fiddling with it and they wonder why their suspension's not working. Well, they've locked all their rebound and compression out to where the suspension isn't even working anymore. It's basically just closed off on all the fluids. Okay, so now that's completely opened up. We'll see how that reacts now. See how slow it comes up? Yeah, a lot slower coming up because I've slowed down that rebound so much to where it's just barely returning at that speed. We'll see it one more time. See, a lot slower. Now we're going to open that back up again just so we can see an example of that. So yeah, if you're ever curious how your bike reacts, just note down your suspension settings and just for giggles, try opening up all your suspension to where there's no restriction at all. Go take it for a ride, see how it reacts. It can be a little dicey when you close off all your suspension because nothing's really working. And that could actually cause into a crash situation because your suspension's not really coming in contact with the ground as quickly as it needs to. So I would actually more opt for just opening everything up and just seeing how loose it feels in those situations. So we're just going to open these Rebound clickers all the way up again to where it's just a free flow through the system. Nothing's restricting it. I know suspension is always a dark art and everyone gets a little lost in the whole plus and minus thing. That's why I typically use fluid analogies on shutting faucets off and turning them on, because that's all we're doing, is we're just restricting or increasing the flow amount. Okay, so now we're completely open again. It pops up a lot quicker now. Basically just boinking you right off of everything. So the other way was really closed off, really slow movement. This is the opposite extreme and just pops up really quickly. Now what we're going to do is talk about balancing your bike. So I've got the front end on the Rebound. It's completely wide open. There's nothing restricting it, so it should pop up pretty quickly. The back end's set right at stock. So what we're going to do, I'm a little shorter guy, so it's kind of hard for me to do this sometimes, and I've got kind of injured shoulders from a racing situation, but we're going to try to compress the bike evenly, front and rear, and we're going to watch how it rises as it comes up. Keep in mind, we've got the front Rebound opened up completely. You can actually see how the front end pops up a lot quicker. Just like that. And bear with me, my shoulder's a little weak right now. So yeah, you can definitely see it and feel it. The front end pops up a lot quicker than the back end comes up trailing after it. So that's an off-balance bike. So one of your goals is, when you are setting your suspension, once you get kind of a base setting, then you can actually go back and just do a little compression check like that, just by holding the bike, giving a good squat and let it rise up. I try to look out in front of the bike so I'm seeing the entire bike instead of looking right down on top of it. That's going to give you a better view. Or if you've got someone that can hang out with you and just kind of watch how the bike is rising and falling. If you got a taller person to work it, works a little easier. I'm a little vertically challenged, so sometimes that's kind of a struggle for me. But that's how you can get the bike balanced. So let's say, for instance, the front end was coming up slower than the rear. Then you'd want to speed up your Rebound and just open up those clickers a little bit more to where it popped up a little quicker. And you're going to get it close to where everything's compressing and rising at the same rate. So I hope this kind of gives you a good base idea on how these little clickers and everything's working. A little bit of knowledge on how important it is to get a proper rated spring, because if you don't have a proper rated spring, the bike's just not going to work for you that well. It's always going to, especially if you're a little bit heavier rider for the spring rate, it's always going to feel like it's wallowing around. It's never going to feel like it's perked up for the situation. So really the whole goal is, the bike you purchased, make it your bike. You don't want to be riding the manufacturer's bike all over the place. That'd be great if they sponsored you, but essentially it's your bike. Might as well make it yours and ride it the way it needs to be. So don't make that mistake of never touching your suspension. That's one of the big key components about these things and really making it an enjoyable ride. The other thing that helps out too is if you're riding in different environments. I do a lot of enduro riding, and I also ride my bike in supermoto racing too. So two different extremes of how that suspension should work. So if you are going in those kind of situations or different extreme situations, just note down your suspension settings. Keep it on a notepad, keep it in your gear bag, so you've always got that with you. And then if you change it out a little bit, you're not going to be nervous about changing it. It's just a couple clicks or a couple turns away. If you've got air suspension, maybe a little air pressure change on that, and then you're back into play for that next adventure out there. So hopefully that helps out, gang. If you have any questions, definitely email us in at gettotheedge.com, or you can give us a shout here at The Edge Power Sports, and we can definitely help you out. I do want to show you some really kind of tricky Rolexy stuff here. Unfortunately, I couldn't grab both forks because they had the other one bolted to the wall, but this is actually one of our A-kit suspensions on here. For an A-kit suspension setup on these, basically you're looking right around 38 roughly for the forks, and about 35 for the shock. If you really take a good look at these are kind of the Rolex of the suspension. You can see how everything's milled a lot different time and different energy is put into these. Now, this is just the external stuff. It's the internals that really gets tricky. There's cone valves in here. There's different valvings. The cool part about it is if you're riding like Barsha or someone like that, we've got those valving specs for you, so we could actually do that. Since we are a WP service center, not everyone has those little secret sauce that they can put in the bike, but we've definitely got that. The other thing is, if you're talking to your local dealer or talking to us, be honest about your riding style, about your riding capabilities. I wish I could say I was busting 60-foot jumps off of these big doubles, but I'm not. I keep it low to the ground, so I'm not set up for that type of riding. So I don't set my suspension up for that type of riding because it's going to hose me up. So be honest with who's setting up your suspension. Check the ego a little bit, and you're going to have a lot nicer ride. I hope that helps out, gang. We'll see you next time. Have a great time. Hope you go out and get nice and dirty out there and have a lot of fun. Okay, take care now.